She touched my front gate and screamed like I had shot her. The sparks cracked loud in the quiet afternoon. She jumped back, holding her hand, yelling, "He tried to kill me! He electrified the fence!" I stood on my porch, coffee still in my hand. "You were trespassing," I said calmly. "There's a warning sign." There were actually 3 signs. But she didn't care. Mrs. Darlene Porter, head of the HOA, walked around my property like she owned it. Every week she found a new problem. My grass was too wild. My truck was too old. My American flag was too large. "This is a family community," she always said with that fake smile. "We have standards." Funny thing was, I owned my land outright. No mortgage. No dues owed. I bought this house after I left the Marines. Paid every dollar in cash from my deployment bonuses and savings. I didn't fight overseas to be controlled in my own driveway. But Darlene didn't like that. 3 months ago, she taped a bright orange paper to my door. "Final notice of foreclosure," it read. Foreclosure. Over unpaid HOA fines I never agreed to. I walked straight to her house that day. She opened the door halfway like I was the criminal. "You owe $240 in violations," she said, not even blinking. "For what?" "Unapproved fence plans. Unauthorized security cameras. Failure to attend HOA hearings. I never got any hearing notice." She smiled. "We sent them." Later, I found out the letters were mailed to an empty lot 2 streets away. That was twist 1. She was building a paper trail. The fence she hated so much, I installed it after someone tried. Breaking into my garage? At 2 a.m., I live alone with my 12-year-old daughter, Emma. When you hear your child scream in the middle of the night, you stop caring about HOA opinions. So yes, I installed a legal electric security fence. 10,000 volts, non-lethal, state-approved, fully permitted by the county. Darlene said it made the neighborhood look dangerous. I said criminals should feel danger. 2 weeks after the fake foreclosure notice, my truck was gone. Towed, right out of my own driveway. I called the towing company. The driver hesitated. "Sir, we got an HOA authorization form." "With whose signature?" Silence. Then he said her name. That night, Emma asked me, "Dad, are we going to lose the house?" I knelt down and held her shoulders. Nobody takes what I worked for. But inside, I was boiling. The next morning, Darlene showed up with 2 men in security uniforms. Not real cops, cheap badges, fake authority. "You have 30 days to vacate," she announced loudly so the neighbors could hear. "This property will be reclaimed by the association." Reclaimed? I almost laughed. "You might want to check county records," I told her. She waved a folder in my face. "We already did." That was twist 2, because what she didn't know, I had checked them too. And the name on the master deed of this entire subdivision wasn't the HOA. It wasn't her. It wasn't even the developer. It was mine. And I hadn't told a single soul yet. She blinked at me like I had just told a joke. "Don't try to scare me," Darlene snapped. "You're behind on dues." The board voted. "You're done here." The 2 fake security guys stood stiff beside her, arms crossed, trying to look important. One of them avoided eye contact. The other kept staring at my cameras. I stepped off the porch slowly. "You sure you want to do this in front of witnesses?" Her chin lifted higher. "I'm the HOA president. I don't need permission." There it was again. That word, president, like she ran a country. "You forged violation notices," I said calmly. "You mailed hearings to an empty lot. You towed my truck without my consent." She laughed. "Prove it." I pulled my phone out and tapped once. From the speakers mounted under my porch roof, her voice echoed from 2 weeks ago. "I don't care if he owns it. Make his life hard until he leaves." The security guy slowly stepped back. Her face drained of color. "That's edited." "No," I said. "That's uncut security footage, time-stamped, backed up off-site." Neighbors were peeking from windows now. One of the fake guards muttered, "Ma'am, you didn't say anything about recordings." She shot him a look. "Shut up." Then she pointed at my fence again. "You assaulted me today. I felt it. That's illegal." "You touched a marked electric barrier," I replied. "That's trespassing." She pulled out her phone and dialed 911 dramatically. "Yes, I need officers immediately. A violent man electrified his property and attacked me." Emma was watching from the living room window. I could see fear in her eyes again. That hit harder than anything. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Real officers this time. Darlene rushed toward them, holding her hand like it was broken.
He tried to kill me.
One officer looked at the bright yellow warning signs, zip-tied, every few feet along the fence. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "these are legal in this county." "He's lying about ownership," she shouted. "We are foreclosing." The second officer turned to me. "Sir, can you show proof of ownership?" I didn't move fast. I didn't argue. I just walked inside and came back with a thick folder. Original deed, county seal, recorded subdivision master transfer. The officer flipped through the pages, then stopped. He looked up at me. "You own Lot 47. "Yes." He flipped another page. "You also own the common access strip and retention land behind. Lots 40 through 52. "Yes." Darlene stepped forward. "That's impossible. The HOA controls that." The officer kept reading. "And according to this, you hold controlling interest in the original development trust." Silence fell. That was twist 3. Years ago, when the developer went bankrupt during Phase 2, I quietly bought the remaining unsold parcels at auction. Nobody paid attention. It was just extra land. But legally, that land gave me majority control over the association charter. Darlene's face went pale. "That can't be right," she whispered. The officer looked at her. "Ma'am, do you have documentation showing the HOA legally supersedes this deed?" She opened her folder. Pages shuffled. Her hands were shaking now. The officer's tone changed. "We'll need to review your foreclosure filings. If notices were sent to the wrong address intentionally, that's fraud. Fraud." Her fake guards slowly walked back toward their car. "Don't leave," she hissed at them. One of them said quietly, "You told us this was legit." The neighbors were fully outside now, watching, recording. And then the tow truck driver from last week pulled up slowly at the corner, like he had been waiting. He stepped out and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Ma'am, you signed the removal order under penalty of perjury." Darlene turned toward him in panic. "I told you I had authority." "You said you owned the property," he replied. The first officer closed my folder carefully. "Sir," he said to me, "it appears someone may have filed fraudulent foreclosure action against you." I looked straight at Darlene. "You wanted to test how far you could push me," I said quietly. "Now we're going to find out how far the law pushes back." And that was the moment she realized this wasn't just about a fence anymore. Darlene tried to recover fast. She forced a shaky smile and pointed at me like she was still in control. "He's twisting everything," she said to the officers. "He's been harassing the board for months. He's unstable." Unstable! That word hung in the air. The second officer looked at me carefully. "Sir, have you had any disputes with the HOA?" I answered calmly. "Only the fake fines, the fake hearings, and the illegal tow." Darlene jumped in again. "He installed a 10,000-volt fence." "That's a weapon!" "It's agricultural grade," the officer replied flatly. "Non-lethal. Clearly marked." Her voice started cracking. "He's dangerous." I took a slow breath. "Officer, may I show you something else?" He nodded. I pulled out another document from the folder. Not a deed this time. A certified letter, signed and stamped. The officer read it silently. Then his eyebrows lifted. "Ma'am," he said slowly, turning toward Darlene, "did you file a petition last month to dissolve the original development trust?" She froze. "That's internal HOA business," she snapped. He continued reading. "Because this petition shows it was rejected by the county clerk, due to majority ownership objection." The officer looked at me. "Your objection?" That was twist 4. She had tried to quietly erase the trust that gave me controlling power. She wanted to remove my vote before foreclosing, but she didn't know I monitor every filing connected to my parcels. Every change triggers a legal alert to my phone. Darlene's lips trembled. "That was procedural." The first officer shook his head. "Ma'am, attempting to dissolve a legal trust to remove a majority stakeholder without disclosure could be considered corporate misconduct." The neighbors started whispering. Someone muttered, "She's been fining all of us." Another voice said, "She charged me $600 for a mailbox color." Darlene turned around. "Don't listen to him. He's manipulating you." But something had shifted. She wasn't leading anymore. She was cornered. Then the biggest punch landed. A black SUV rolled slowly down the street and parked behind the patrol car. Emma's eyes lit up from the window. I didn't smile. But inside, I knew the timing was perfect. A woman stepped out in a sharp navy suit. Calm, focused, no nonsense. Darlene frowned. "Who is that?" The officer recognized her first. "Ma'am," respect in his voice. She walked straight up to us and handed him a file. "County Fraud Division," she said quietly. Darlene's breath caught. Yes, that was my wife. Most people in the neighborhood thought I was divorced. I never corrected them. My wife works long rotations out of state. She doesn't advertise what she does. She investigates financial abuse cases, HOA corruption included. Darlene stepped back. "This is harassment." My wife finally looked at her. "No, harassment is fabricating foreclosure. Documents to force someone off property." The officer opened the new file. Inside were copies of 5 other questionable fines Darlene had issued in the last year. Identical patterns, misdirected notices, late fees stacked intentionally, threat letters timed right before holidays, predatory pressure. The officer looked up slowly. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning." "For what?" she whispered. "Possible fraud. Filing false documents, and impersonation of authority." Her knees almost gave out. "This isn't over!" she shouted at me as they guided her toward the patrol car. "You'll regret this." I finally said the one line I had been holding back. "I didn't fight for this country to be bullied on my own land." Silence. The patrol car door shut, and just when I thought it was done, my wife leaned closer to the officer and said quietly, "You may also want to check where the HOA reserve funds were. Transferred last quarter." The officer paused. "Transferred to where?" She looked at Darlene through the patrol car window. "That," she said calmly, "is where this gets expensive." The street didn't clear after the patrol car left. Nobody went back inside. They all stood there, quiet, processing what they had just seen. For years, Darlene had walked around, like she owned the place, fines, threats, rules, changing overnight. People paid because fighting felt impossible. Now she was sitting in the back of a police car, and it still wasn't the worst part for her. My wife stayed calm. She never raises her voice. She doesn't need to. The HOA reserve account, she told the officers, was supposed to hold $312,000 for road repairs and drainage upgrades. One of the neighbors gasped. "That's our money." The officer looked at his tablet. "We'll subpoena the bank records." My wife gave him a small nod. "Already requested." Darlene started banging on the patrol car window. "You can't freeze that account." "I have authority!" "Authority!" There it was again. The officer leaned toward her window. "Ma'am, where were the funds transferred?" She hesitated. That hesitation said everything. Later that evening, we got the answer. The money had been moved into a consulting services company, registered under her sister's name, in another state. That was twist 5. She wasn't just abusing power. She was draining the neighborhood. And it didn't take long for the news to spread. By morning, half the community had printed their HOA statements. Late fees, violation charges, emergency assessments, all adding up. Then came the next hit. A certified letter was delivered to every homeowner on the block. Emergency HOA meeting. Immediate attendance required. Signed by me. Because technically, as majority trust holder, I now had the legal right to call it. That evening, the clubhouse was packed. Darlene wasn't there. She was still being questioned. The vice president of the HOA sat at the front table, sweating through his shirt. "We didn't know," he kept saying. "We trusted her." People didn't buy it. One older man stood up. "My wife cried for 2 weeks after you threatened foreclosure over flower pots." A young couple said they almost sold their home because of constant violation letters. Emma squeezed my hand while I stood up slowly. "I never wanted control," I said. "I just wanted peace on my property." Silence filled the room. But if you give small power to the wrong person, they start believing they own you. No one argued. Then my wife placed a single document on the table, a motion to suspend the current board pending investigation. It passed unanimously. That night, control of the HOA shifted completely, but Darlene still thought she could fight. 2 days later, she posted bail, and instead of laying low, she went on the attack. She filed a civil lawsuit against me, claimed emotional distress, claimed bodily harm from the fence, claimed I used intimidation and secret influence to destroy her reputation. $250,000 in damages. When I read the papers, I almost laughed. Emma looked worried again. Dad, is she going to win? I folded the lawsuit calmly. She just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because lawsuits mean discovery. Discovery means bank records, emails, text messages, transfers, everything. And once it entered civil court, it became public. She wanted a fight. Now she was about to see what one really costs. End the story.